Across the Fence, our ongoing series on water quality examines agricultural runoff. I'll talk with UVM Extension's top researchers about what's being done and why. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. The water quality of our lakes, rivers, and streams is impacted by a variety of factors. One of the most significant problems is runoff from developed land, which includes parking lots, roads, and housing developments. Another area of concern is agricultural runoff, which involves manure, fertilizers, and soil nutrients. UVM Extension specialists are working with farmers to help limit ag runoff, and today we're going to learn about what's being done and what's being done already. Joining me are Jeff Carter and Heather Darby. They are both UVM Extension agronomists. Jeff leads the Champlain Valley Crop, Soil, and Pasture team out of the Middlebury Extension office, and Heather leads the Northwest Crops and Soils team out of the St. Albans Extension office. Thanks so much for being with us. Now, there's a lot of ground to cover when it comes to the work that you guys are doing with farmers. Each of you manages a team of researchers and specialists. Talk about the areas that you oversee in the work that you do. Maybe, Jeff, you can start.
Yeah, thanks, Judy. So we're in the Middlebury office down in Addison County, and we have a team of agronomy outreach people that I have pulled together where we work with farmers to look at field practices and help them figure out, how can we have good agriculture and also protect water quality.
What are some of the things that you've touched on with them?
Well, we work with farmers to look at tillage practices, manure management, manure injection, different cover crops, all the same practices that Heather and I will both be talking about.
And Heather, how about for you?
Same type of work that Jeff's doing. We have a team up in St. Albans region, sort of the Northwest region, a group of folks that are constantly out working with farmers, educating, implementing on-farm research and demonstration on a variety of practices that we are encouraging farmers to adopt so we can minimize any impact on the environment.
Well, depending on the weather, the growing season in Vermont can run from about May until October. How many research projects do you have running, and what are the kinds of things that you're studying or investigating?
Well, what we've pulled together is that we have about 40 different sites on different farms throughout the region. We tend to work in Addison, Rutland, and Chittenden County areas. And so we have all these different sites where we have field practices side by side so we can compare if we do a cover crop or not do a cover crop on a farm scale basis.
Why is that important?
Well, farmers like to see the small research, to have the data to reassure them that things will work, but then they want to see it applied in the real world on large fields. So we've gone to a larger system of comparing practices on 5, 10, and 20 acre fields.
And how about for you, Heather?
Same type of work, but we generally start with smaller scale research plots to look at multiple practices. So with smaller scale plots, you can look at sometimes 5 up to 20 or 30 comparisons at a time, whether it's fertilizer rates or tillage practices, and then kind of scale down to the best practices that we find kind of have the largest impact or the most economical, and then take those out to the fields, as Jeff had mentioned, and bring them into a sort of a real world setting where farmers can see them actually perform on their farm, and then make some decisions about whether or not they'll, adopt those practices. So
yeah, it sounds like it takes a lot of time, though. I mean, you don't just jump onto a farm and say, "Here, let's do this."
No, not at all. No, it's really nice to have the basic kind of research and the small plots Heather talks about, because there you can replicate your treatments, you can get statistics and all that, but a lot of farmers just want to see it on their farm or their neighbor's farm side by side, and they'll make decisions that way. But we want to make sure that they have the really good basis, so we do data collection and provide that information back to farmers.
Yeah, I think that, the time-consuming part is both trying to build a relationship with the farmer and get them interested, and oftentimes it's actually the other way, where they have something and they come to us and try to get us interested. Usually doesn't take much to get us interested, especially if they're something coming from them, and then to put everything into place takes time, like Jeff said, and people to be out collecting the information when it needs to be collected, processing it, and then delivering it back to the farmers. I think that's the most important piece, is that we not only collect all that information, but then once it's collected, our goal is to make sure it gets right out to the farming community so they can make decisions in real time, not 3-4 years down the road. So everything is now, today. We've got to answer these questions immediately.
Well, because I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, we've built some really strong collaborations with farmers, and a very important project is what Heather started with the Farmers Watershed Alliance up in Franklin County, and then I have the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition in Addison, Chittenden County, and those farm groups are the farmers that we connect with, and they allow us to come out and do research on their farms and help spread the word to other farmers. So that collaboration with farmers through those groups has been very important to our work.
Because word of mouth is big.
Yes.
Yeah. Everybody wants to know what the Jones are doing, right? And I don't think the farmers are all that much different, and somebody tries something new and everybody wants to see how it works and
then also answer the question, well, what's this going to cost me?
yeah, that's a big
certainly.
thing. Yeah.
Oh, we absolutely try to take into effect the costs and benefits of these practices. You know, they have to support water quality, but if they don't support farm profitability, they won't get implemented.
But it's not, I mean, this can happen. I mean, it can accomplish both goals.
Yeah, that's, I think, what's really exciting is when all the pieces line up, and a lot of these practices do line up in that way where, you know, as an example, reduced tillage. Once we kind of figure out all the right procedures, I guess, to put in place to implement reduced tillage without seeing a negative yield decline, then farmers are really saving money and also helping to, you know, slow down soil erosion and build soil health. So things can really line up and have quite, you know, significant financial impacts to
Can
the
you tell me
farming
a little
community.
bit about how that reduced tillage works? I mean, how often does a farmer usually till a field, and then just sort of walk us through that?
Well, I mean, it really depends on the farm, but if a farmer's growing an annual crop such as corn, you know, generally the fields get worked in sometimes in the fall, sometimes in the spring, and sometimes both. And usually there's, I don't know, 3 to 4 tillage passes, if not more, you know, starting with maybe a moldboard plow, and then a disc, and then a disc, and then a field finisher. So you're going over that field multiple times. You can imagine that involves labor, somebody driving a tractor, fuel, the equipment itself. You know, it requires quite a substantial input from an economic side. So then if you remove all of that, you have those cost savings and kind of less work in a way, because you don't have to keep going out 3-4 times to do that if you're just going out and planting the corn directly into the ground. So the flip side of that is it's not as easy as it sounds. We wish it was, but there's a lot of process that a farmer has to really think about and go through to, you know, select the correct fields, make sure the soil is in good shape before they just cut the tillage habit. So,
and there is a risk to moving to no-till production, and farmers are risk avoiders, because if we have a drop in crop yields, then that affects their bottom line. So we've been out showing them no-till corn planting, no-till cereal grain planting, with different techniques to maintain your yields and not disturb the soil.
And so because of Act 64, Vermont's Clean Water Act, new water regulations are expected to be in place by July 1st of this year, 2016. What's the expected impact on farmers and on the work that you do?
Well,
you go ahead.
Well, I think immediately the smaller farmers are starting to catch on to what the larger farmers have had to do for the last 5 or 10 years. And they're going to have to start paying more attention to nutrient management plans. And we do have a strong program for developing a nutrient management plan for themselves. And I think our work's going to increase just because we have more people who want and need the education about the practices we're talking about.
I think it's exciting, actually. Like Jeff said, we have a strong nutrient management program, which is one of the practices farmers will likely have to put into place. And farmers are taking that class, and once they're there, they really, really enjoy it. You know, I have a farmer in one of my classes now that said, I didn't want to come to this. I hated school so much, you know, and then you're talking homework and all this stuff I have to do. And then, you know, we're 3 classes in, and he's like, this is the best thing I've done in years. I'm learning so much, and I'm going to be a better farmer after this. So that's what's really exciting, when everybody sees the benefit to implementing these practices. So,
and it's a fun learning process too, because they're in small groups, they're talking with each other, trading ideas about, you know, how to manage their fertilizer and manure and crops.
Because, I mean, manure is, people think it's something that you have to get rid of, but actually it's a huge benefit for farmers. I mean, they use manure.
Yeah, we had this conversation in our class last week about how lucky, really, dairy farmers are, because they have all the best tools in place to actually improve their soils, have really healthy soils, and be able to protect the environment. They have a good source of organic matter in the form of manure, a nice source of nutrients. They're able to rotate crops and let them rest out of tillage. And so the manure is just a significant resource to improve the health of the soil and feed the crops at the same time. And really what they're learning in class is how, what are the best rates to use and when to apply it, and sort of the practices to avoid loss into the environment. So.
Now, Jeff, you've been with Extension for more than 30 years. What sorts of changes have you seen in practices related to preventing problems like erosion and runoff?
Well, I've been reflecting about this, and I came here in 1985, and the practices were being tried back then. I mean, manure storage and different ways of handling manure. We actually had an aerial seeding program for cover crops that was sponsored by the government. And a little bit of no-till going on, but it just didn't rise to the occasion. And I think what's happened is over these years, now we have something called the internet. We have instant communication. We can take electronic photographs and look at them and share that information. We can just share the information. Farmers can talk to each other much more readily, and so the adoption all of a sudden blossoms, and then we have it here. So we're still talking about manure management, fertilizer management, cover crops, reduced tillage, crop rotation. They're good basic farming practices. A couple other things. Machinery, engineering has advanced so much in the last 20 years that now the no-till corn planters are that much better than they used to be. Plant genetics are so much better than they were 20 years ago that plants can do better in these situations. And then the social aspects of people being aware and wanting to make these changes has just been phenomenal.
There's always a lot of finger pointing when it comes to agricultural runoff. What do you have to say to the people who are pointing fingers?
I like the one the kids always have. Don't forget, when you point at me, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you sometimes. So we all have to work together on this, and everybody has to recognize their part in cleaning up the lake.
What would you say about that, Heather, as far as what people can do? We're talking about farmers, but now smaller farmers, landowners are responsible as well.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has a responsibility to, minimize their impact on the water. It's not just farmers, and it's not just, people that have animals or land. It's all of us. We all have a responsibility, and just as farmers are doing, they're tapping into education, resources, local watershed groups. My recommendation to everybody else would be do the same, understand how you're having an impact and how you can minimize that impact, and get involved, because it's all of our water, it's all of our lake, and it's not just one person's problem or
so folks in neighborhoods maybe think twice about whether you really do need to fertilize your grass.
And I don't know if people have noticed, but I think in Burlington, where there's drains, you can see little fish there. Well, that means whatever's going into there is making its way to the lake. And so thinking about these kinds of things on a personal level are really important, and maybe do that first before you stick that finger out. But.
Yeah, and as the blame pointers, we need to realize that this is a problem that happened over a long period of time. There's not just one solution to it. There's not one part of the state that made the problem. And we all just need to figure this out together.
Now, Jeff, we're just about out of time, but how can viewers find out more about the work that you're doing?
Well, we have a website, of course. It's through Extension, and it's just UVM Extension, and then CV Crops, and so we have a website where you can contact us. We have newsletters we send out. We do workshops. We'll have a big conference coming up next month for no-till and cover crops that Heather and I sponsor. So there's plenty of opportunity if they just contact us. How's that?
Good. And Heather, what about your team?
Same thing. I mean, same outlets that Jeff uses, we use, from websites, social media, Facebook, blogs, tweets, pretty much. We tweet.
Social media.
Yeah, so I mean, there's just like anything else,
All right, well, I want to thank you for joining me today.
All right, well,
Thanks,
thank you,
Judy.
That's our program for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.